I guess let's go ahead and look at these assignments. The first one we'll look at is brief exercise 13.9. It's a pretty straightforward problem. What we want to do is we want to take a bond and pay it off early. So we have a $500,000 bond. We want to repay it before its due date, before it ends. So what you want to do is you want to take it off. So how do you take off a payable? Well, you do a debit because you put payables on as credit, so you take it off as a debit. Premiums are put on as a credit, and so what was left over on the premium is what's unamortized. That's $15,000, so you take it off as a debit also. The amount that was paid, so when you paid it off, the amount that they're going to pay off is based off the market rate, which at this time is 99%. So they're going to only have to pay 99% to pay it off. So they're going to pay $495,000. Then you plug the last number. So since we have to have a credit to get debits to equal credits, it's going to be a gain. If it was the other way, if you needed to do a debit to get the debits to equal credits, you would have a loss. So if you need to do a credit, it's a gain. So if you just wait to do the gain and loss last, you can just plug it in and it works out. Let's see the next problem. So this problem's got a lot, seems like a lot going on, but it's not too bad actually. There's a couple of things we have to do. So this is a Matt Perry Incorporated. It has a bond of $6 million, but it's issuing a new bond and it's going to pay off the old bond with the new bond. So the old bond is $6 million, 11% due in 10 years. The new bond is $9 million, 10% due in 15 years. It's sold at a discount, and they're paying off the old bond with a premium. So let's go ahead and just see how it works. The first thing they want us to do is to put the new bond on the books. So if we just look at putting the new bond on the books, we're going to get, it's sold at 98%, so we're going to get $8,820,000. Sold at a discount, right? It's sold at 98%. So but we're going to have to pay back the full $9 million. The difference is a debit. That's a discount, right? So we know it's a discount because we're getting less than we have to pay back. So you put that on the books. The second part is to pay off the old bond. So we need to take the old bond off. So we need to take $6 million bond payable off. It shows that there's unamortized discount of 120, so we need to take that off. You take a discount off with a credit, right? You put it on with a debit, so you take it off with a credit. And then they paid 102% to get it to pay it off. So instead of paying $6 million, they're going to have to come up with $6 million times 102%, or $6,120,000. So to get the debits to equal credits, you do a debit. $6,240,000 is going to be the debit side. So in order to get that to work, we need to do a debit of $240,000. So again, wait to do the gain or loss when you're redeeming the bonds last, and the debit and credit will have to equal out. This bottom part is just showing you how that 240 was calculated. You don't really need to do it if you use the plug system like I'm showing you, but it just shows you that the amount paid for the bond, and this is the carrying value of the bond, so the amount paid is more than the carrying value, and so that's why you have a loss of 240. But you can use that method if you want. I like to just do the plug method. Let's go ahead and look at the next problem. So this is the problem that's got probably the most going on, and so generally this is the idea. We're building an arena. The arena costs $2.5 million. We need to borrow $2 million because we already have some of it. So we're going to borrow $2 million. The stated amount, meaning the face amount, is 10.5%, but the market wants 10%. So the market wants less than it's paying, so we're going to have a premium situation. The bond pays annually and for 10 years. So the first thing they want you to do is to calculate the premium. So I'm just going to go over and do it the old school way. And so if we take the present value of the bond, take the present value of the principal, the principal is the amount that's going to be paid back, $2 million, use the effective interest. So you want to use the 10%, not the stated amount, but the effective amount. Use the 10%, 10 years, present value of 10%, 10 years on the $2 million. That gives you a present value factor of 0.38554. Here's our present value for that principal. The interest payments are always going to be $210,000. Those are going to be based off of the stated amount on the bond. Remember, the amount that they pay is always going to be the same, and it's going to be based on the face amount or the stated amount. That's $210,000. But when you do the present value factor of an annuity of $210,000 for 10 years, make sure you use 10.5%. The present value factor needs to be based off of the effective rate, which is 10.5%. 10 years, using the annuity, we get 6.14457. Add these two present values up and you get $2,061,446. That shows you we have a premium, because the amount that you're going to get, $2,061,446, is more than you have to pay back of $2 million. So to put that in a journal entry, you put the cash you're getting, $2,061,446. The premium is the $61,445, and the bond payable is the $2 million. So part B says, all right, now let's do an amortization table for part of it. So we want to go up until 2028. So we're going to go from 2024 to 2028. So the amortization table is going to work like this. Since it's a premium, it's above the stated amount, the face amount, and so it's going to be reduced. So every time you calculate your amortization, it's going to reduce your carrying amount. The interest paid is always going to be the same, $210,000, but the interest expense is going to be different. It's going to be the stated amount. It's going to be the effective amount, right? 10.5. No, I'm sorry, the effective amount is 10, so we're going to use the effective amount, 10% of the carrying value. So 10% of the carrying value, the difference is $3,855. We're going to subtract that. The next period, you take the new carrying amount times 10%, and then compare that to the interest paid, which is always going to be the same, and then subtract that number. And so you don't have to go out to the end unless you want to, but to answer the question, you have to go to 2028. All right, here's where it gets confusing, and so be careful with this. I'm going to make sure this makes sense for you. July 1st, 2027, so halfway between January 2027 and January 2028, half the year, they pay off half the bond. So they pay off half the bond halfway through the year. That's where it gets confusing. It's half and half. Okay, so they pay it off by paying $1,065,000. So the first thing is, what is the carrying value of the entire bond at halfway point? So instead of the interest, this being amortized as $5,132, because that would be for the entire year, take half of that, and so you just take the $2,048,684 and then subtract half of the $5,032, because that will put you at July 1st. So the carrying value of the whole bond is $2,046,118 halfway through the year. The carrying value of half of the bond is half of that. So you just take the $2,046,118 and you take half of that, and that gives you half the bond. The loss is going to be how much you paid, $1,065,000, compared to the carrying amount of the bond that you're going to pay off, $1,023,059. The difference is going to be $41,941. That's how we'll get the loss. So you take the amount paid times half the bond halfway through the year. All right, so let's do the interest expense. So first of all, the amount of cash that you're going to pay halfway through the year to pay this off. The first thing we need to do is catch up the interest. So we need to pay the interest from January 2027 to July 1st, 2027. So we need to pay off half of the bond, half of the interest, because halfway through the year. So half of the bond halfway through the year. So half of 210,000 times half of that again. So take half twice. So half of the bond, half of the 210, then take that answer and do half again, and that's going to give you the amount of cash, because that gives you half of the bond halfway through the year. Half of the half is what confuses people. The interest expense is going to be done by taking the 204,000 and 204,868 and taking half of that because it's halfway through the year, and then half of that because we're only paying off half the bond. So the interest expense, we need to catch it up halfway through the year for half the bond. The difference is going to be the premium that you're going to amortize, the 1,284. It's the difference between the two. So plug this number. That's the easiest way to get it. Now we need to get rid of the bond, or half of the bond. So we're going to get rid of half the bond, so $1 million, and then how much do we have left over in interest payments? Well, if you take the difference between the carrying value and the bond payable, that's going to be, the carrying value has the premium still in there, and the bond payable that you're paying off, that's the face value that you're paying off. The difference is going to be the premium that's left on there. So the premium that's left on is $23,059. Debit that to take it off. And then the cash that was paid was given to us above at $1,065,000. Then we can figure out the loss by plugging it. So the loss is going to be the difference between the debits and the credits. We need to do a debit, so that means we have a loss. All right, so this problem, it's not really any harder than the other problems. It's just confusing because you're doing half of the year and you're doing half of the bond. So you can't just do half. You have to do half and then half for some of this stuff to work out. So just be careful with that, and I think you'll get through it.